The sun hung low over the jagged cliffs, painting the sky in streaks of red and gold. A cold wind whispered across the barren wasteland, carrying dust and the scent of old stone. On the highest cliff, the ancient dragon lay still, his enormous body stretched across the rocks. His scales, once bright and shining like molten gold, were now dull and cracked. His wings drooped uselessly, and smoke rose in thin streams from his nostrils. Each breath seemed heavier than the last. He had lived for thousands of years, seen empires rise and fall, and watched countless stars fade in the endless sky. Once he had been powerful, feared by many and revered by all. Entire civilizations spoke his name in awe and fear. But now, even the ground seemed to tremble at his weakness. The dragon's eyes, sharp and glowing in his youth, were now clouded and dim. Pain racked his body, and deep in his chest, something heavy and dark gnawed at him. He knew he was dying. Below the cliff, the wasteland stretched far and wide. Strange crystal formations jutted from the ground, pulsing with a faint light. The air shimmered slightly as if the land itself remembered the dragon's strength. Few dared come near him. Humans told stories about his power, but most avoided his territory. Aliens, hunters, and explorers all stayed away. Even those brave enough to approach rarely returned. On this day, however, someone did not run. A small figure moved carefully across the rocks, her steps light and fearless. She was a human girl, no more than 12, with brown hair tied in a loose braid and curious eyes that shone like tiny stars. She carried a worn leather book, edges frayed and pages yellowed. She walked slowly toward the dragon, her heart racing, but she did not stop. The dragon's ears twitched as he sensed her approach. He had felt humans before, but never one like this. They usually ran or screamed when they saw him. This girl did not run. She climbed the cliff until she reached the edge, standing just a few feet from his massive head. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind blew between them, carrying the silence. Then the girl sat down gently on the rocky ground. She opened her book and began to read aloud. Her voice was soft, almost musical, yet full of warmth. The dragon turned his head slightly, listening. At first, he barely understood the words. They were human stories, simple and fragile, about small people facing great dangers, about kindness, hope, and courage. Nothing like the battles and conquests he remembered. The dragon snorted weakly. "Why do you waste your voice on me?" he rumbled. His voice was deep and cracked, carrying centuries of sorrow. "I am dying. No story can change that." The girl looked up at him, unafraid. "I do not tell stories to change you," she said. "I tell them so you are not alone." Her words were plain, but they carried a strange power. The dragon blinked, confused. No one had ever cared if he was alone. Most had feared him, some had tried to kill him, but no one had tried to simply sit with him. As the girl read, a strange thing happened. The dragon felt memories stir in his mind. Memories of flying over mountains, of flames lighting the night sky, of laughter and songs from a time when dragons and humans had shared the world. The stories reminded him of hope, a feeling he had long forgotten. For the first time in centuries, he felt a flicker of something bright in his chest, small but insistent. The sun continued to set, casting long shadows over the cliff. The girl's voice carried on, steady and kind. The dragon closed his eyes for a moment, listening, letting the words wash over him. He could feel the pain, yes, but also a strange calm. The emptiness inside him seemed a little less hollow. For hours, the dragon and the girl remained there. The wind howled, the crystals glowed faintly, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Around them, the wasteland was quiet, as if it too were listening. Slowly, the dragon shifted his massive head closer to the girl. He did not speak, but he did not drive her away. She had no fear, no plan, only the courage to sit beside him and share her voice. As night fell, stars appeared in the sky like tiny, distant fires. The dragon looked at them briefly and then at the girl. He realized something he had not felt in 1,000 years. Trust. Perhaps she was foolish, or perhaps she was special. Either way, she had reached him in a way no one else ever could. The girl closed her book as darkness settled around them. "Rest now," she whispered. "I will stay here." The dragon rumbled, a sound that shook the cliff slightly. It was not a roar of power, but a sound of acknowledgement. Perhaps, just perhaps, this small human girl had brought a spark of life back to the dying giant. And so, under the quiet night sky, the dragon and the human girl sat together. One was ancient and broken, the other small and fragile. Yet in that moment, the impossible happened. They shared a silence full of warmth, and the first step of something extraordinary had begun. The next morning, the dragon woke slowly. The sun had just risen, painting the wasteland in pale gold light. His massive body ached, but something inside him felt lighter. The human girl was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the rocks beside him. She held her leather-bound book open, her eyes bright and eager. "Good morning," she said softly. "Today I will tell you another story." The dragon lifted his head slightly. He still felt weak, but curiosity, something he had not felt in centuries, stirred in him. He watched the girl carefully. Her small voice, steady and warm, had drawn him from his long, bitter loneliness. Perhaps there was more to her than other humans. The girl began to read. Her words painted pictures in the air, simple shapes at first, of a tiny village where humans lived quietly. She spoke of a boy who wanted to help others even when he was afraid. He carried no sword, no shield, and yet he faced great dangers. He climbed mountains, crossed rivers, and met strange creatures along the way. He failed many times, fell into rivers, got lost in forests, and even argued with friends. But he never gave up. Every day he tried again. The dragon listened carefully. He had seen many warriors in his long life, many creatures brave and strong, but none like these small humans. They were fragile, yet their courage was unlike any fire he had known. The boy in the story was not strong like him, not fast like his wings, but his heart was mighty. The dragon felt something he had not felt in centuries: admiration. The story continued. The boy made friends with a strange creature from the forest. The creature was small and weak but clever. Together they solved problems that seemed impossible. The dragon's eyes followed the girl's movements as she read. Her voice rose and fell, soft and steady, drawing him into the story. At one point the boy in the story faced a great danger. A dark shadow loomed over the village, threatening to destroy everything. He was terrified, but he remembered the creatures he had helped, the friends he had made, and the courage he had built inside him. Even though he felt small, he acted. And in the end, his small courage changed the outcome. He saved the village, not with strength, but with cleverness, kindness, and determination. The dragon closed his eyes. For the first time in 1,000 years, he remembered what it was like to feel hope. He had seen kingdoms fall, stars burn out, and his own kind die around him. But the story reminded him that courage did not always come from power. Sometimes it came from heart. The girl noticed the dragon's eyes opening slightly. "Do you like it?" she asked, her voice gentle. "The story?" The dragon made a small rumble, a sound softer than a roar but deeper than a growl. "It is strange," he said, his voice weak but full of thought. "It is not my kind of story. Yet, it reaches something inside me." The girl smiled. "That is the point," she said. "Stories can reach places that swords and fire cannot. They can make someone stronger in ways that no one else can." The dragon watched her. He thought of his long life, all the battles he had fought, all the empires he had ruled. He had power, yes, but he had never known someone could teach him something simply with words. And now, this small human girl was teaching him more than any dragon elder ever could. The girl continued to read. She told of small victories, of mistakes turned into lessons, and of friends helping each other when all hope seemed lost. She spoke of courage not as a weapon but as a choice, something that came from heart, not claw or flame. The dragon felt a warmth spread through his chest. It was not fire, not magic, but something gentle and powerful. He tried to move a little closer, letting his massive body rest more comfortably on the rocks. The girl did not move. She had learned long ago that the dragon's pride was strong, and that trust had to be earned slowly. She kept reading, her voice steady, her eyes fixed on the pages, but glancing at him now and then. Hours passed. The sun rose higher, the wind shifted, and the land seemed quieter around them. Even the crystals on the cliffs pulsed with a soft light. The dragon realized that he had not felt this alive in centuries. He felt awake. And he knew it was because of the girl and because of her stories. At last she closed the book gently. "That is enough for today," she said. "Rest now. Tomorrow I will tell another story." The dragon lifted his great head and looked at her. His eyes glimmered with something unfamiliar. "Tomorrow? I will listen," he said. "Do not stop. Your stories, they are strange but they are good." The girl smiled and nodded. "I will not stop," she said. "I will stay with you until you are better. I promise." The dragon rumbled deeply, a sound that shook the rocks slightly. It was not a roar, not a warning, but a sign of something else: trust. For the first time in countless years he felt hope. And though his body was still weak, his spirit stirred. Under the bright sun, the ancient dragon and the human girl remained together. One was old, large, and mighty, yet broken. The other was small, fragile, and human, yet fearless. And in that simple connection the impossible began. A spark of life returned to the dying giant, not through strength, not through magic, but through stories, courage, and heart. Days passed and the dragon grew stronger, though only a little. Each morning, the human girl returned with her leather-bound book. She climbed the cliffs carefully and sat beside him, opening the worn pages. Her voice carried through the air, soft but confident, telling stories of small humans facing impossible odds. Each tale was simple, yet it touched the dragon in ways he could not explain. At first, the dragon listened quietly. He did not speak, only watching the girl with his enormous eyes. Sometimes he would shift slightly, testing if he could move his wings or lift his head higher than before. Each movement was painful, but the warmth of her stories made it easier. He realized that her words were more than stories, they were a kind of medicine for his spirit. The girl noticed his small movements and smiled. "You are stronger today," she said. "I can see it." The dragon let out a low rumble. He did not need to speak, she understood. He felt something unfamiliar, a connection, something he had not felt in centuries. The dragon had ruled kingdoms, fought wars, and survived storms of fire, but he had never felt this kind of bond with any creature. The dragon slowly lifted his massive head. "Your stories, they make the past seem alive," he said. "They remind me of things I thought I had forgotten." The girl nodded. "That is why I tell them," she said. "Stories can keep memories alive and they can give courage when the heart is tired." As the days went on, the dragon began to respond more. His tail twitched when he heard something surprising in the stories. His wings lifted slightly when the girl described a character rising above fear. Sometimes, tiny sparks of fire would escape his nostrils as he laughed at the cleverness of the humans in her tales. It was not much, but it was a start. The dragon realized that he could still feel, still react, still live. The girl began to teach the dragon in other ways too. She showed him how humans saw the world, not as a place of constant battle, but as a place of discovery, kindness, and cooperation. She told him about simple inventions, about friends helping friends, and about courage coming from small acts. The dragon listened carefully, trying to understand. It was strange at first. Dragons thought in fire, in flight, in war and power. Humans thought in heart, in hope, in ways dragons did not always understand. One day the girl told a story about a tiny creature who could not fight but helped a great army win by using cleverness. The dragon's eyes widened. He could see the lesson in it. Perhaps strength alone was not always enough. Perhaps there was more to the universe than raw power. He rumbled, softly, thinking about how small humans with nothing but heart could achieve what even dragons could not. The girl smiled at the dragon's deep rumble. "You are learning," she said. "That is why we have stories. They teach us who we can be even when we are scared or weak." The dragon nodded slowly. He had not realized it, but he was learning, not only from her words but from her courage. She was small, fragile, and human, yet she had no fear of him. She sat beside him, day after day, and shared her stories. That alone was a kind of bravery the dragon could respect. The connection between them grew stronger. The dragon began to recognize her patterns, how she opened the book, how she paused before turning pages, how she spoke with care. He began to anticipate her movements, and sometimes he would tilt his head as if to follow her more closely. The girl noticed these gestures and felt a thrill. The dragon, ancient and wise, was responding to her in ways that no one had thought possible. As the dragon regained strength, the wasteland around them seemed to change. The glowing crystals pulsed a little brighter. The wind carried fewer sharp stones and more warmth. Even the distant mountains seemed less hostile. Perhaps the dragon's life was connected to the land, or perhaps the land itself felt the bond forming between human and dragon. One evening, as the sun set behind the cliffs, the dragon spoke again. "I feel lighter," he said, his voice low but steady. "Your stories, your presence, they remind me that even the old can still learn, still hope." The girl nodded. "That is why I am here," she said. "You are not alone. I will stay and tell you stories every day." For the first time in centuries, the dragon felt hope rise within him. Not just hope to survive, but hope to live fully again. He realized that he did not only need strength and fire, he needed connection, understanding, and heart. And the small human girl, fragile and brave, was giving him all of these things. Night fell, stars twinkling in the sky above. The dragon curled slightly, resting his head on the rocks, while the girl continued to speak softly, her voice carrying over the cliff and across the wasteland. The dragon listened, learning not only the stories but the power of courage, hope, and trust. The connection between them was no longer simple. It was a bond, fragile but unbreakable, a promise of something extraordinary yet to come. And so, under the starlit sky, the dragon and the girl remained together. One ancient and mighty, the other small and human, yet both sharing a bond that would change them forever. Through stories, courage, and heart, the impossible was beginning. The dragon was no longer alone, and a new kind of life had started. The day began quietly, with the sun rising over the jagged cliffs and the wasteland glowing faintly under its light. The dragon lay on the rocks, his massive body resting but his senses alert. The human girl sat beside him, opening her leather-bound book as usual. Her voice carried softly across the cliffs as she began another story, full of courage and cleverness. Suddenly, a sharp sound cut through the calm air. The dragon's ears twitched and his eyes snapped open. Shadows moved across the wasteland below, larger than any human or animal. He recognized them immediately, aliens, armed and dangerous, moving with purpose. They were hunters, drawn by legends of his power and his ancient blood. Many had tried to kill him before, seeking to use his strength for themselves. Most had failed. Some had never returned. The girl looked up and saw the approaching figures. Fear flashed in her eyes, but it was brief. She closed the book and stood. "Do not worry," she said calmly. "I will help you." The dragon tilted his head, surprised. He had fought countless enemies alone, but here was a fragile human ready to protect him. Her courage was remarkable, and it sparked something deep inside him. The hunters climbed the cliffs quickly, weapons glinting in the sunlight. The dragon rose slowly, feeling the pain in his wings, but also the stirrings of strength returning from the girl's stories and presence. He prepared to roar to warn them off, but the girl raised her hand. "Wait," she said. "I have a plan." Using her knowledge of human ingenuity, she quickly set small traps and distractions along the rocks. She arranged mirrors and shiny surfaces to reflect sunlight, creating flashes that confused the hunters. She whispered instructions to the dragon, telling him how to move without hurting her. The dragon, amazed at her cleverness, obeyed. Together they became a team, one old and powerful, the other small and fearless. The hunters advanced, but the traps slowed them. They stumbled over rocks, slipped on loose stones, and were blinded by sudden bursts of reflected sunlight. The dragon used these moments to make small movements, shifting his massive wings and tail, ready to act if necessary. His body was not fully recovered, but he felt stronger than he had in months. The girl's cleverness gave him courage, and the stories she told had taught him patience and strategy. The girl climbed higher on the rocks, calling to the hunters. "Over here," she shouted. They focused on her, thinking she was alone and easy to capture. Instead, she lured them into the trap she had set. The dragon waited, silent and massive, letting the hunters fall into the designs she had prepared. Then, when the right moment came, he used his fire, not wildly but with careful precision, targeting only rocks and barriers to block the hunters. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the hunters panicked. Some tried to fight, but they were unprepared for the combination of human cleverness and dragon power. The girl moved quickly, signaling the dragon when to act. He rumbled, swung his tail, and let out bursts of fire that scattered the hunters without harming them too severely. Together, they forced the intruders back down the cliffs and away from the dragon's territory. After the hunters fled, the dragon lowered his head, breathing heavily. "You were brave," he said, his voice low but filled with respect. "Humans are stronger than I imagined. Your courage saved me today." The girl smiled. "Stories teach us courage," she said. "And sometimes courage is not just fighting. It is thinking, planning, and never giving up." The dragon watched her. He realized that he had underestimated humans for centuries. They were small, fragile, and weak in the way dragons were not, yet their hearts and minds held power he had never experienced. The girl had proven that strength was not only measured in fire and claws, but in intelligence, bravery, and determination. For hours they sat together after the danger passed. The dragon rested his massive head on the rocks, watching the girl. She had risked herself, using her mind and courage to protect him. He could feel a new kind of respect growing in his heart, something softer than fear, stronger than anger. It was trust, and it felt powerful. The wasteland around them seemed calmer. The glowing crystals reflected the setting sun, and the wind blew gently across the cliffs. The dragon realized that he was changing, not only in body but in spirit. The girl's courage, combined with her stories, had sparked something in him that no fire or battle could. He was alive again, not just in body but in heart. That night, under the starlit sky, the dragon and the girl sat together. The danger was gone, but the lessons remained. The dragon had seen strength, bravery, and intelligence combined in a small human. He understood now that true power could come from unexpected places. Humans were not weak, they were extraordinary in ways he had never imagined. The girl closed her book and looked at the dragon. "Tomorrow," she said, "we will continue our stories. But remember, courage is everywhere, not just in dragons or soldiers. Even the smallest act can change the world." The dragon rumbled softly, a sound full of thought and admiration. "I understand," he said. "And you have taught me more than I thought possible. I am grateful." In the quiet night, the dragon and the human girl remained together. One ancient and mighty, the other small and fragile, yet both had proven that courage, wisdom, and heart could overcome even the greatest dangers. Together they had survived the threat, and their bond had grown stronger. The impossible had begun. The dragon was no longer alone, and a human girl had shown him the true power of heart. The first light of dawn painted the cliffs in soft gold and pink. The dragon stirred slowly, his massive body moving more easily than before. His wings lifted slightly, and for the first time in months they felt strong under his muscles. The human girl sat beside him, her book closed now, but her eyes bright with excitement. She had been with him every day, telling stories, teaching him about courage and showing him that life could still be beautiful. The dragon looked down at her. "I feel better," he said, his voice low but steady. "Not just my body, but my mind, my heart. Your stories, they are powerful." The girl smiled. "I told you," she said. "Stories are stronger than people think. They can heal, teach, and even save lives." The dragon nodded slowly. He realized that she was right. Her small human heart had done what fire, claws, and centuries of strength could not. They stayed on the cliff for hours, watching the wasteland below. The glowing crystals pulsed gently, reflecting the sunlight, and the wind was calm. The dragon felt a sense of peace he had not known in centuries. He remembered the battles, the losses, the long loneliness. And he realized that he had been alive all that time but never truly living. Now, with the girl by his side, he felt alive in a new way, connected, understood, and hopeful. The girl opened her book again, though not to read this time. Instead, she drew small sketches in the margins. Tiny humans, dragons, and creatures living together in harmony. "One day," she said softly, "humans and dragons can share the world again. We can help each other, protect each other." The dragon's massive head tilted as he watched her. He had seen empires rise and fall, wars destroy lands, and countless species vanish. But maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for a new beginning. As the day grew brighter, a soft sound came from below. Birds, long absent from the wasteland, began to sing. Small animals emerged from hiding. The dragon realized that his own life was tied to the land around him. His strength returning meant the wasteland was healing too. And it was not just his power, it was the human girl, her courage, and her heart that had started this change. The girl looked up at the sky and then at the dragon. "You can fly again," she said. "I know it. You just need to believe." The dragon flexed his wings slowly, testing them. The muscles were stiff, but they responded. A spark of fire ignited in his throat, small but bright. He had not felt this alive in centuries. The girl's words, her courage, and her stories had given him hope, and hope was stronger than any wound. The dragon rose slightly, his great body lifting from the rocks. He felt the wind against his wings, the weight of centuries on his shoulders, and the promise of the sky above him. The girl held onto his claw gently, not afraid, ready to rise with him. Together they began to climb, testing the air currents. The dragon felt the strength returning fully, not just in body but in spirit. He roared, a sound that shook the cliffs, deep and powerful but full of joy rather than anger. From the cliffs, the wasteland stretched endlessly. Mountains, rivers, and glowing crystals lay under the rising sun. The dragon and the girl took off together, flying high above the land. The wind rushed past, carrying freedom, courage, and the promise of a new day. The girl laughed, clinging to him safely, her small voice full of joy. The dragon's roar echoed across the mountains, announcing life, hope, and renewal. They flew over forests, rivers, and plains, the dragon's massive wings casting shadows below. The girl pointed at creatures below, humans, animals, and even a few dragons, showing the dragon that life was everywhere. "One day," she said, "we can all live together like this. No fear, no hate, only trust and friendship." The dragon rumbled deeply, feeling a warmth he had not known since his youth. She was right. The future could be different. The future could be bright. As the sun climbed higher, the dragon and the girl returned to the cliff. They landed gently, and the dragon lowered his head to her level. "You have done more than anyone could," he said. "Your courage, your heart, it has changed me. It has given me life again." The girl smiled softly. We helped each other, she said. You gave me stories to imagine and I gave you stories to heal. That is what friends do. The dragon looked out over the wasteland, then at the human girl. He felt a deep gratitude, stronger than any treasure, fire, or empire. He knew now that even the oldest and mightiest could learn from the smallest and simplest. Humans, fragile as they seemed, held a power dragons could not match, the power of heart, hope, and courage. The girl closed her book for the last time that day and leaned against his massive chest. The dragon lowered his head beside her. Together they watched the sun fully rise, painting the world in gold. One ancient and powerful, the other small and human, yet both had changed each other. Through courage, stories, and trust they had begun a new dawn, not just for themselves but for the world around them. And so the ancient dragon, once dying and broken, rose again, not through strength alone, but through the heart of a human girl who believed in him. Together they would face the future, fly above the stars, and remind the universe that even the smallest creature can change the course of history.